The boardroom fell silent as Marcus Chen, CEO of Tech Central Industries, slammed his fist on the mahogany table. His face flushed crimson, veins bulging at his temples as he glared at the 12 brilliant minds who'd failed him yet again. 6 months! He shouted, his voice echoing off the glass walls overlooking Manhattan's skyline. 6 months and millions of dollars, and you're telling me we're no closer to solving this problem? My 8-year-old nephew could do better. The engineers shifted uncomfortably in their leather chairs, avoiding eye contact. The algorithm was supposed to revolutionize renewable energy distribution, but a single coding error had corrupted the entire system. Every attempt to fix it created 10 more problems, like pulling a thread that unraveled the whole sweater. Sarah Mitchell, the lead engineer, cleared her throat. Sir, we've tried everything. The bug is embedded so deep in the legacy code that— I don't want excuses! Marcus cut her off. I want solutions. This company's reputation is on the line. We promised our investors a working prototype by next quarter. Do you understand what failure means? It means bankruptcy. It means 10,000 people lose their jobs. He paced the room like a caged tiger, his expensive Italian shoes clicking against the marble floor. At 42, Marcus had built Tech Central, from a garage startup to a billion-dollar empire through sheer determination and ruthless efficiency. He hadn't gotten here by accepting defeat. You know what? He said, spinning around with a bitter laugh. I'm so desperate I'll make an open offer. Fix this algorithm, and I'll personally write you a check for $200 million. Hell, I'll give it to anyone who can solve it. I don't care if it's the coffee lady or the guy who empties the trash. The engineers exchanged worried glances. They'd never seen their boss this unhinged. As the meeting disbanded, Marcus stormed to his office, loosening his tie. He didn't notice the small figure mopping the hallway outside the boardroom, a 12-year-old girl with intelligent dark eyes and her father's maintenance. Uniform 2 sizes too big, covering her school clothes. Maria Santos had been coming to work with her father, Roberto, since her mother passed away 3 years ago. With no family nearby and after-school programs too expensive, Roberto had no choice but to bring her along during his evening shifts. She'd do her homework in the break room, help her father with simple tasks, and stay invisible. That was the rule. Don't bother the important people. But Maria had been listening. For 6 months, she'd heard the engineers complaining in the hallways, leaving documents in the recycling bins, discussing their failures in the cafeteria. She'd seen the code, projections through the glass, walls during late-night sessions, and she'd noticed something they hadn't. Papa, she whispered, as Roberto pushed his cleaning cart past her. I think I know what's wrong with their computer problem. Roberto's weathered face creased with concern. Mija, no! We don't interfere. These are very smart people. We just clean. But Papa, they're stuck because they keep looking forward. They need to look backward. Roberto had learned never to underestimate his daughter. While other kids watched cartoons, Maria devoured library books on mathematics and programming. Her teachers called her gifted, a word that meant little when you lived paycheck to paycheck in a 1-bedroom apartment in Queens. But Roberto saw the spark in her eyes, the same spark her mother had before cancer took her away. What do you mean backward? He asked quietly. Maria pulled a crumpled piece of paper from her pocket covered in neat pencil marks. They keep trying to fix the new code, but the problem isn't new. It's in the original foundation code from 2019. See, when they migrated the system, they converted the date format. But they missed one variable. It's creating a cascade error every time the system tries to process historical data. They're not looking far back enough. Roberto stared at his daughter, then at the CEO's office door. Every instinct told him to stay quiet, to protect his job, to keep Maria safe from disappointment. But he remembered his wife's final words. Let her fly, Roberto. Don't let fear clip her wings. He took a deep breath. Wait here. Roberto knocked on Marcus Chen's door, his hand trembling slightly. The CEO looked up with irritation, ready to dismiss whoever dared interrupt his brooding. Mr. Chen, I'm sorry to disturb you. I'm Roberto Santos, night maintenance supervisor. My daughter thinks she might have found something about your computer problem. Marcus's expression shifted from anger to disbelief to something resembling amusement. Your daughter? How old is she? 12, sir. A bitter laugh escaped Marcus's throat. Of course, why not? Let me guess. She's a genius who learned coding from YouTube? Look, I appreciate the gesture, but I have a team of MIT graduates who can't crack this. I don't have time for— Please, sir. Roberto's voice was steady despite his fear. Just 5 minutes. If she's wrong, we'll never bother you again. I promise. Something in the janitor's dignity gave Marcus pause. Maybe it was exhaustion, or maybe it was the memory of his own immigrant father who'd worked double shifts to put Marcus through college. Against his better judgment, he nodded. 5 minutes. Maria entered the office like she was walking into a palace, her eyes wide but her spine straight. She approached the desk and, without being asked, picked up a marker and walked to the whiteboard where the problematic code was still displayed. Here, she said, pointing to a line of code that had been written 5 years earlier. This variable, dateconv legacy, it's using a European date format when everything else uses American format. When the system processes any data from before March 2020, it flips the days and months, which triggers the validation protocol to reject it as corrupted, which cascades through all dependent functions. She drew a quick diagram showing how the error propagated. Everyone's been trying to fix the downstream effects, but if you just correct this one variable in the legacy code and run a single backward compatibility check, the entire system should stabilize. Marcus stood frozen, staring at the whiteboard. His mind raced through the implications. Could it really be that simple? Had they been looking at the problem from the wrong angle this entire time? He grabbed his phone and called Sarah Mitchell. Get back to the office, now. Bring your laptop. 45 minutes later, the boardroom was packed again. Engineers crowded around a computer as Sarah implemented Maria's suggestion. The room held its collective breath as she hit enter. The system compiled. No errors. She ran the diagnostic suite. Green lights across the board. She tested the historical data processing. Perfect execution. Oh my God, Sarah whispered. It works. It actually works. The room erupted in cheers and disbelief. Engineers who hadn't slept in weeks hugged each other with tears in their eyes. They'd spent half a year and millions of dollars. And a 12-year-old had solved it in 5 minutes by looking where they hadn't thought to look. Marcus slumped into a chair, overwhelmed. He looked at Maria, who stood quietly beside her father, trying to understand the commotion she'd caused. How did you see it? He asked her. Maria shrugged. I guess. I wasn't looking at what was broken. I was looking at what changed. My mom used to say that when you lose something, you don't keep looking where you've already looked. You go back to where you last had it. Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. The armor he'd built over years of corporate warfare. This child, who had every reason to be bitter about life's unfairness, had just saved his company. Not for money or recognition, but because she saw people struggling and wanted to help. He pulled out his phone and made a call to his lawyer, then to his bank. When he turned back to Maria and Roberto, his eyes were damp. I made a promise, he said. $200 million to whoever solved the problem. Roberto raised his hands in protest. Mr. Chen, we don't want— Please, Marcus interrupted gently. Let me finish. I'm setting up a trust fund in Maria's name. $50 million for her education and future. The rest is going to establish the Elena Santos Scholarship Foundation. He looked at Maria. Your father told me about your mother. This foundation will support children like you, brilliant minds from families who can't afford to nurture their gifts. Full scholarships, mentorship programs, everything needed to let them soar. Tears streamed down Roberto's face. Maria looked confused, trying to grasp what was happening. But there's one more thing I need, Marcus continued. Roberto, I want to offer you a position as Director of Facilities and Community Outreach. We need people who understand what real dignity looks like. And Maria, if you're willing, I'd like you to join our Youth Advisory Board. We need minds that see differently. 6 months later, Tech Central's revolutionary energy system launched to global acclaim, changing how renewable energy was distributed worldwide. At the launch event, Marcus told the story of how it was saved, crediting Maria by name. But the real revolution was quieter. The first class of Elena Santos scholars, 25. Brilliant kids from low-income families started their journey toward futures that had seemed impossible before. Maria mentored them, still taking the subway from Queens, still helping her father on weekends, but now with a security she'd never known. Roberto kept his old maintenance uniform in his new office as a reminder of where they'd come from. Sometimes, late at night, he'd see Marcus walking the halls alone, stopping to thank the cleaning crew by name, asking about their families, really seeing them, perhaps for the first time. The algorithm had been fixed with a simple shift in perspective, but the real fix, the one that mattered, was in the hearts that learned to look beyond titles and assumptions, to recognize that brilliance wears no uniform, and that sometimes the answer to our biggest problems comes from the voices we've forgotten to hear. In the end, Maria didn't just solve a coding problem. She reminded an entire company, and eventually, through their story, thousands of others, that humanity's greatest breakthroughs come not from those who think they have all the answers, but from those humble enough to learn from anyone, even a janitor's daughter doing homework in a break room, seeing what everyone else had missed